So I'm going to talk about Novus Inceptio for hopefully less than 10 minutes, so that this can be a relatively shorter video. Novus Inceptio is a game from a Czech guy by the name of Martin Marcus Mastny. If I fucked up his name, I apologize. And apparently just this one guy, and that really shows. He also works with another guy by the name of Thomas Oliva, who is also a Czech guy. He's done a lot of big name music work in the gaming industry. But beyond those two guys, there's no one else that I can tell that really put together the game other than this one guy, and it really shows. First, because this is going to be a very pessimistic discussion, let me just say that I have enjoyed the hours that I have spent with Novus Inceptio. It is a very mindless and mellow game. You don't play it to get anything done, but I've spent about 26 hours playing, and I feel like I'm done, but I still feel like I could go back and do more things. I haven't had a bad time, but it's not a fun time. When I was streaming part of it, one of my viewers likened it to a cross between Minecraft and what's the name of the super disappointing game? No Man's Sky. And at the time, I didn't really kind of see it because there's a lot of space exploration in No Man's Sky. But yeah, because in No Man's Sky, what do? You wander around and you don't really do anything. Here in this game, you wander around, you don't really do anything. And that's kind of a problem that I think, again, links back to the part where this is only done by one guy. Again, I haven't not enjoyed my time, as circuitous as that sounds. But getting into the actual game, it's basically an open world game where you're just dropped in there. It's got the stupid storyline that I'm not even going to get into. It's just, okay, here you are, go make some shit, and you're basically naked, and you pick up some leaves, and you do a whole bunch of crafting things, and all of a sudden you have a forge, and you're building huge towers and castles and all kinds of shit. And that's fine. The graphics in the game are fairly good. It's actually gotten awards from some Czech publications, as well as back in 2014 and 2015. It was in the top 100 games on Indie Database. Someone called Game Access 2016 said that it had best graphics. And this is information I'm pulling from his website. So Game Access is a Czech gaming thing, which is why none of us has ever heard of it unless, we're Czech. But the models look fine. It's using the Unity engine, so there's that to say. The textures are also fairly well detailed. If you get in really close, you can see where there's problems. But, it's nothing really to complain about. The weather effects are horrible. Rain is essentially a smear on the screen. Whenever you're doing crafting or world manipulation stuff, the animation is pretty good, except that the sounds are not timed correctly. But the combat animation is bad. It's just bad. Music-wise, it's all ambient stuff, and it's not bad music. It's just totally unremarkable, and you're better off playing other stuff in the background on your own. One thing that I really found interesting about the game is that the in-game tutorial and help system is really, really robust, far more than I would have expected, because the basic mechanics of the game are incredibly well explained, and that really struck me as being surprising. It still falls prey to being somewhat obtuse as far as how crafting works. Like, some materials give you bonuses to doing crafty things, but it's not clear how that all interacts. And because there's no wiki, really, no one knows how it interacts. Gameplay-wise, there's only a few basic things you do. You gather, you craft, you do architecture building. You can fish, and then you can sort of fight things, but I wouldn't recommend that. Gathering is just basically bog standard. You click to gather. And there's two main gathering skills. Well, three if you include fishing. There's foraging, which sometimes you're foraging when you're doing another crafting thing, and sometimes you just forage. And it's not clear how that works. Botanizing is you pick up plants and shit. But sometimes, you click it and nothing happens. Sometimes something happens. It's not really clear on how any of that works. and it's very frustrating because you never know how to level up the botanizing. Beyond that, just when gathering things like from trees and shit like that, or mushrooms from the ground, there's inconsistencies in the UI in that sometimes left-clicking picks stuff up, sometimes left-clicking destroys it, and that's very frustrating. Crafting, once you've got all this stuff, isn't so bad, but it has needless steps that make things more tedious. If you're just going to mindlessly mass produce an item, it's fine. But if you're trying to make a specific type of thing, like instead of just making an axe, you want to make an axe with a plated tin head and a cherry handle, then doing those kinds of things involves a little bit more tedium. And there's also a great frustration because some items require workshops that you can build, and those items that you can craft from there will sometimes require sub-items that you can't craft at that workstation, so you have to exit out of it to go into the generic crafting station and do crafting there, so it doesn't talk to itself, basically. Building buildings is easy in principle, but when you're trying to get into the details, it's a pain in the ass. For one thing, building takes a lot of materials, and in fact, if the little droid that acts as your storage didn't have infinite storage, which it's not supposed to, it really wouldn't be worth doing, in my opinion. Also, trying to place items in the build interface can be a pain in the ass. Like trying to wiggle things here and there. You can't get it to register exactly where you want it to go. It fails miserably. And then after you've finalized your design and you want to actually build it, sometimes it works perfectly. Sometimes you can't even click on the thing that you want to apply materials to build it. Sometimes the game thinks that it's already built, and so you can only deconstruct it. But if you deconstruct it, it says you got materials back, but you didn't really. And sometimes the game says that you don't have the tools to do it when you do, and a lot of these things can only be fixed by restarting the entire game, and that's a lot of frustration. The fishing minigame, which I guess you could include under the gathering, it's fine. You tell it to fish. You have to, hit a bar and then hit, keys in a certain order, and that's fine. But that reveals another problem in the game, in that it's loot table. There appears to be like a global random loot table, in that when you're fishing, you'll pick up things like ancient crystals that aren't out in the world. They're only in these special dungeons. And sometimes you pick up fish, and sometimes you pick up designs for electronics, and that doesn't make any sense. And those plans actually create a lot of wasted filler in this loot table, because there will be plans to make things like a brown pillow, and a blue pillow, and a pink pillow, when it could just be, here are plans to make these different colored dyes, which are actually in the game. And then you could make the dye and then apply it to a pillow, rather than have all these little recipes. And then also, like when you're trying to forge it, it's weird, because sometimes you can be in a specific area and you think, oh, I will get clay from this, and sometimes you'll get clay from it, and sometimes you won't ever get clay from it, and that's very frustrating. So when you do try to do any kind of exploring into the world to see where you can get more clay or what have you, you realize that the leveling system in the game is non-existent. There's this mechanic called generations, which you play, and you start at the age of 18, you move until 75, and then you die. And there's no penalty for death. You go up a level when you die of old age. And just to put it out there, when you die from combat or whatever else, then you just start up again at that same exact point, and you never lose anything. So then why die? Why do any of this? Well, apparently going up in generation means that you are level higher, because that's how that mechanic works, but there's no way to level up with any type of urgency. It takes like 6 or 7 hours to get from age 18 to age 75, and then you're the next level, so that's a long fucking time to wait to level up. And moreover, the world is striated into certain rings of difficulty as you move further away from the starting point, that are these levels. And if you go, like, let's say 3 kilometers away, you're now in a level 15 area, and so where you were before swinging your sword that was doing 6 or 10 points of damage to something that had 20 or 30 health, everything was great. Now you're doing with that same exact sword, 1 point of damage to something with 130 health that will, hit you for 80 damage. So, I mean, you can't really explore the world very safely unless you're just willing to always run away. And it's not really clear how you can do more damage by getting more strength, because how do you get strength? Who knows? How do these stats interact? It's never really clear. That scaling into that combat, it's too steep. And to say nothing of the actual mechanics of the combat, which they're just bad. They're just bad. I don't even want to get into it. I don't really have a lot of more things that I want to say about the game, because I have a lot of negative opinions about it, and that's not necessarily because I've had a bad time. It's because I'm frustrated by what I see could be a very well done game. There's a lot of stuff here, but none of it's really developed very deeply, and I think tying it all the way back to what I said at the beginning, it ties into the fact that there's only one dude making the game. He has all these ideas, and they're decent ideas, but they're never fleshed out. I feel like he starts on one thing, and then he works on that for a bit, and then he works on something else, and works on something else. So you have all this stuff that could work very well, it just never gets around to it. And as a matter of fact, there are these random dungeons that appear randomly, sort of. And there's nothing to do in them. Like there's dungeons where you can just get mushrooms and rocks, and sometimes there are chests with stuff in them. Sometimes the stuff's good, sometimes it's bad, but who knows? So it's, once you explore it just for the sake of exploring it, it's fine. But then when you see that same exact type of dungeon pop up, it's like, well, what's the point? And indeed, right now at the stage in development of the game, 2 years in, I do kind of feel like, what's the point? I mean, I can go in and tool around and do stuff, but why would I? And I feel kind of bad because I have to contrast it with another open world game that's still in early access on Steam, Subnautica. Subnautica is basically the same thing. You're on an alien world. You've got this, you go around. I mean, in Subnautica, you can't even kill shit. But there's a certain amount of stuff to do. But there's a lot of depth to the system, and the Subnautica team has been putting out bi-monthly updates for the last couple of years, and so there's a strong feeling that there's always work being done with it. And when I look at the Novus Inceptio development, I look at the Steam forums, and the guy he's always there, and he's always talking about the game and interacting, and I don't have the feeling that he's abandoned the game whatsoever. What I do feel like is, I feel like it's just one guy trying to hold back a tidal wave of stuff, or deal with a tidal wave, and I don't know that it's asking too much of him or what. But anyway, this has been, I guess, my review of the alpha version of Novus Inceptio for now, for this. To be clear, and I'll go back and say something at the beginning of this, I did get a review copy of this for free from the guy, which, I really appreciate it. And I feel kind of bad talking shit about the game, but I'm doing it not because I think he's doing a bad job. I don't at all. I just think it needs a lot more work, and if I'm frustrated, it's because I can see where it could go, and I want it to get there sooner. So, anyway, thank you for spending your time with me.